Hello and welcome to the E-commerce Edge How to Thrive in 2025 webinar series. This webinar series came about. I did a report over winter where I interviewed 21 different e-commerce experts. I asked them the thing they'd found out last year from their data they were using this year in their business. And then I turned that into a long report that got published in April. I'll put the link in the chat. There's a chat, by the way, so if you want to take part and ask any questions, do. And then I turned this into a series of webinars and persuaded all my experts to come along and talk about their tip in more detail, and obviously to update you because obviously things move on so fast in e-commerce. So today I'm joined by Emily. Emily, would you like to introduce yourself and tell everybody your tip?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm Emily Dolton, customer insight and growth specialist. And my top tip is understand the rationale behind each business decision, anticipate outcomes based on data, and accurately track results. And I work with founders to help them figure out what is working in their business.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Emily. That's great. So let's get on with the topic in hand and expand on your tip. So really, first question I've got is just a bit of introduction. What is automation? What is AI? Because I know the two terms are used quite interchangeably, and we're talking about smart AI and automation today. Would you like to just give us that kind of information as the start point of which is which?
Yeah, sure. So the difference between the two is that automation is taking repetitive tasks and doing them using a series of rules, whereas AI is developing its own thought processes and its own decision making based on the data or the insights available. So one is really about automating things that would be happening anyway if a person could just do that and they would put rules in place and say, okay, if a customer has done this thing, send them this email. If a customer has done this thing, show them this piece of content. Whereas AI is taking that information and making brand new decisions from off the back of it.
Lovely, thank you very much. And I know it's there's a bit of a blend going on, isn't there, where people are saying they've got an AI tool, and actually really there's quite a lot of automation with AI on the end. So is there kind of a level of sophistication around, what is actually understanding whether you're using AI or whether it's kind of more automation in a process?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's definitely a place for both. You're right, the two terms are used interchangeably sometimes. I think a really good example of a system that uses both is Klaviyo, depending on one's choice of pronunciation. So Klaviyo is quite interesting because it began as almost entirely an automation tool for sending emails based on customer behavior, whether they are new into your list or whether you are an existing customer and you've done a certain type of behavior. So you can build campaigns and flows to make those automated. The AI piece is now really coming into the fore with Klaviyo because they are doing far more on the predictive modeling side. So not only let's send somebody an email if they have done X, Y, or Z, but also let's predict the point at which they would naturally have next made a purchase, or actually we can tell from the prediction that the AI within it has done that this person hasn't bought and we would have expected them to, so let's give them a nudge, or trying to nudge them at the point before they become lapsed customers. So it's a really interesting blend, and I think a lot more tools are going to become more of a mix of automation and AI than we've seen in the past.
That's a really good example. Thank you for that. And in terms of the success, obviously, when you allow with an automation, I assume as a business, you kind of have control because you're setting what you want to go in your segments, who it's going to target. Whereas once AI hits and AI takes over, is that control lost? Is it very transparent what's going on? Or is it, in your mindset, is it this complete change between you understanding and knowing and setting the rules to the automation to it letting AI play itself out?
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting point and such a good question. So yes, you're absolutely right. From an automation perspective, businesses can absolutely understand fully what is going on under the hood. So with traditional propensity models, you can build a model to say, okay, I can see that if my customer has bought more recently, they are more likely to buy again. Or if somebody has bought from us 4 times, they're more likely to buy again. Or if they've bought this product or this category, they're more likely to buy again. And you as the business owner or the marketing team or the analysis person, you can determine whether you're using a tool or not exactly which customers are fitting into which pot. And you can predict that because you're the one putting every little detail in. And that applies for all kinds of automation throughout our businesses, not just from a marketing viewpoint, but every piece of automation. With AI, you're absolutely right. It does change. You don't get as much visibility of what's under the hood. So let's take example again of Klaviyo. It might be that it says, okay, actually, we know that customers are likely to lapse at this point in time. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to tell us, okay, we have determined, the we in the AI machine, it's been determined that a customer is likely to lapse after not purchasing for 9 months, say. You're not necessarily going to get from the tool, this is exactly how that has been determined. So it's about, as always with these tools, it's about understanding what exactly is going on under the hood. And from an AI perspective, we might not necessarily know each rule that the AI has determined, but it's about testing really carefully. Let's test an AI segment versus our own built segment to see how those results differ. Now, what we would anticipate seeing potentially is that AI would win out each time as those models become more and more and more sophisticated. But even if we see that, that's a really good determiner that yes, the AI is working. We may actually find that that isn't always the winner every time, and it's about understanding why it's not the winner, and if it is the winner, making sure we're backing the right one.
Thank you. It gets more and more complicated though, doesn't it? Because AI is evolving every week.
Yeah,
I know when I
it's
use
so
AI
fast-paced.
myself, if I ask AI the same question twice or ask it for the same bit of code, it will do it in a different way. So where things are constantly being replicated, and things are moving on, the AI model which Klaviyo used last week might not be the one they use this week or the week after. And it's just,
Absolutely.
then there's suddenly you end up with this situation where you're monitoring and constantly trying to check what it's doing as well, don't you?
Yeah, and I think to a greater or lesser degree, as we become more familiar with these tools and they become more and more embedded, there will be more trust there, for want of a better word. So, it might be that we start by using an AI created segment, and we do a split test between the AI created segment and our own lapsing segment, for example, and we test that robustly, and then that will give us more assurance that the next time we use an AI segment, that actually we're pretty confident that we've done this a few times now and we can always see that the AI wins out. This absolutely isn't always the case. So for example, with Meta ads in Ads Manager, Meta is forever making helpful suggestions of AI tweaks that we can make, and it now auto generates different images within Ads Manager, for example, and some of those outperform the native images, and sometimes it's the other way around, and also some of those AI generated images are not up to par yet. They are, as you say, going to be rapid. Everything is developing so quickly and improving so quickly, but it's why, so ads is a really good example. Actually, even pre-AI, ads is a great example of things that amplify what's working really well organically, and it's exactly the same with AI. It's, let's look at what is already working and then let's amplify that using great ads. Or actually we can see that we know this particular set of ads works really well for us, so yes, let's try and amplify that by putting more variations out into the mix of people's feeds using AI. But we need to be very careful, especially in these early months of those particular capabilities within the systems, that we're not just throwing AI out into the mix and not testing it and keeping a close eye. We can't just assume that the AI is going to perform better, and often it doesn't. That is likely to change over time as its algorithm refines and becomes more robust. But it's about making the best use of the tools in the way that they are intended, not just entirely relying on them. So there's certainly the need for really understanding what's going on within your business, not just handing it over to the tools and expecting them to fix any issues.
It's fascinating.
Results. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Absolutely fascinating. And also, I think if you're a larger retailer, you've naturally got more data for the AI to work with. If you're a smaller retailer, you've got far less data. So then you don't know, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but is it then a blended based on every single customer? Or is it just blended on your data? What data is it using within its algorithms?
Yeah,
And
that's
is
a
it
really
then
good
putting
question.
an approximation based on other people's data, or is it just using your data? And
Yeah, absolutely.
I was looking yesterday at someone and their client that's selling a particular product. And I said, well, basically, for the amount of products being sold, we just can't infer anything statistical from that. And how do you know that AI is going to also make that decision? That I could
Yeah,
spend hours and hours
absolutely.
thinking about it.
You're totally right. And also because of all the laws around what the data that people are allowing the tools to to read into and to share, and where are they getting all of that information from, and people being able to opt in and opt out. Yeah, and it's such a fast moving landscape. It's going to be really interesting to see how the governance follows alongside AI as it develops further too.
It is. No, thank you for that. Well, shall we continue more talking about AI and why we shouldn't use AI? Because I know you've got opinions on this. Are you actually ready to use AI to be our first decision?
Yeah, absolutely. So AI can do amazing things. It's fantastic in terms of the capability. I think Well, the two most common things that I hear from business owners, and this isn't even specific to AI, but it's just becoming even more and more, you know, as the weeks and months go on. The two most common things I hear from business owners are we don't know what's working in our business, and every person and their dog says I should use their tool and I don't know which one to pick. So I think what's really important is that business owners and teams need to really understand their business, and for every tool that they choose to use, not just going, okay, well that one sounds like it's gonna, let's say for example a website optimization tool that puts the orders the products into a different order depending on what a customer is most likely to buy. So that on the face of it sounds like that's brilliant, like you're going to invest in this tool, you'll put it onto your website, it's going to show everybody the best products, this is going to be an absolute game changer, and it completely can be a game changer. However, you've got to be ready to make the best use of that tool. So the same with ads amplifying what's working well organically. AI is going to work well for you if you're putting really good inputs into it. So you need to understand, you know, there's no point in just saying to AI, here are our best-selling products, because actually they might be best-selling in terms of revenue, but they might not be best-selling in terms of margin. Or it might be that they're best-selling in terms of bringing in new customers, but actually if you show these products at the top of your feed instead, yes, you won't necessarily have that huge bestseller spike, but you'll get people who are going to become loyal because of the first product that they've chosen. So with all of these tools, it's about, in terms of deciding if you're ready to invest or not, it's about really thinking through what are we trying to achieve with this tool, and do we have the right inputs within our business already in terms of knowledge or in terms of data or in terms of models that we can input into the system. You know, are we actually ready to make the best of this? Because there isn't, you can invest in the tools before you have that knowledge and that information, but you often end up throwing money to the wind because you then don't necessarily get the results you want. And then you don't know if it's because the tool isn't right or it's because the inputs that are going in aren't good enough. So it's really important from a strategic perspective to think through. So let's say, for example, let's go back to Klaviyo's example. If we said, okay, we want to, you know, we're currently using another email provider, or we're using Klaviyo, but we're thinking about really starting to use the AI side of things, not just the automation side of things. So thinking through, what are we trying to achieve with this? So, okay, do we have a particular bottleneck in our business where we're seeing that we have got, you know, no problem bringing new customers in, but in terms of retention, we're not seeing that repeat buyback, or we don't even know if customers are coming back. You know, that bit of insight is missing. But it might be that you think, okay, so we think we want to use the AI parts of Klaviyo. So then I would say, well, okay, go away and look at, you know, what's your buyback rate? Do 90% of your customers come back, or do only 10% of your customers come back? You know, what's the highest priority? What's the best win that you can get? Okay, let's say not very many of your customers buy a second or a third time. So you might go, okay, let's test an AI segment there where we look at all of our customers who have become loyal. At what point did they place their second order? Now let's build a segment around that so that we can try and get the tool to help us using its predictive technology, but so that it's going to give us the best possible benefit. So it's about making sure that you aren't just plugging a tool in for the sake of it. Not that business owners make decisions, you know, off the cuff like that without thinking about it, but it's about making sure you're asking yourself the right questions before you invest. It's not just, does this look like it'll be the biggest win? It's about, is this going to be the biggest win for our business at this stage in our growth, knowing what we know about our customers? Or do we need to go and find out more about our customers to make sure we get the best out of our investment?
That's a really good answer, Emily, because I think every single thing you see now has got AI in it, hasn't it? Everything is AI, 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 AI. And you could spend all your whole life, you know, rather than working on your business, working on AI and working on AI solutions.
And all of your budget on new tools, you know, there's...
Exactly. But how many businesses are actually ready for AI and able to implement a project and really look at the operational side, the strategic, the management, pull it all together and actually manage a new project? And I think we all underestimate as well, something's new and shiny and exciting. Yeah. We underestimate how much time and effort it actually takes to do that. Absolutely. The importance of determining what success outcomes you want to be.
Definitely.
And then really how to implement it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I see really frequently is businesses who've invested often in things like dashboard tools, which are brilliant. You know, they are worth their weight in gold. I love a dashboard. But they invest in them and then they find they don't have the time to get the best out of them. And so again, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's about understanding what success you want to come from this investment and making sure you've allocated the time and the financial resources to really do a robust test and make a decision to carry on with that tool, and make sure that you're testing what that tool's capabilities are fully, one thing at a time, because you don't want to change all of the variables all at once. You want to be able to do it in a measurable, measured way so that you can really see if you're getting the best from your investment.
Yep. So once we've got AI in the business, assuming we have invested, what kind of monitoring would you put in place, and how long would you expect to spend monitoring it? Because obviously the
Yeah,
role of actually doing the AI work is kind of disappearing, but then there's all this kind of time to actually check, what's going on. What do we
yeah,
find there?
absolutely. So, great question. I think in terms of the monitoring side of things, where possible, and it isn't always possible, but where possible, doing some A/B testing is a really good way to see what a tool is doing. So let's say, for example, you put, let's go back to the example of products being ordered in a customer's feed. You could say, okay, actually, let's create a mirror image of our page, and let's have, it doesn't necessarily have to be a 50-50 split. It kind of depends on the volume of your visitors. You want to make sure that it's statistically robust. But you could say we're going to create a mirror image, and we're going to have one version that has the new tool in place, and we're going to have one version that doesn't have the new tool in place, and that is our normal way of just selecting by order of bestsellers. In terms of the time that you need to monitor for, there's a really interesting question, and the answer is it varies very much business to business. It partly depends on the volume of data that you're going to get through your 2 test versions. So you want to make sure that you have enough data going through that you can see enough of a difference in the results. But what's really key actually is your customer buying cycle. So if you are a business, let's say, that sells something that people come back and, let's say you're a skincare brand, and it's a subscription model, and you have people who have to come back onto the website to replace their orders, and they do it, replace their products, and they do it every single month. You can determine relatively quickly if you're starting to see a difference between the 2 versions. If you're a business who has customers who, let's say you sell occasion wear, but your customers are really loyal, so you've had customers come back and buy from you every single summer for 10 years, but they tend to only buy in the summer, you're not going to be able to see that difference nearly as quickly. Now, that's not to say you should run the side-by-side test for a whole year, but it's about really understanding, okay, actually, if the purpose of the AI tool is to try and increase our average order value, brilliant. Maybe you can immediately see that it's increased your average order value, and you can decide that within a month. If instead the purpose of the AI tool, again, this is about you strategically making the decision to invest and understanding from the software company exactly what you can expect to see. So let's say instead that the objective is to increase the rapidity of a second or third order. Well, that might take, if you're an occasion wear business that normally sees a year's gap between orders, actually you might need to wait 6 months to see if, oh, crikey, actually the proportion of people who are buying within 6 months has increased from 5% to 10%, say. You're never going to bring the whole of your second orders from the following year, because that's the life cycle of your customers' buying patterns. So the answer really in terms of the time and frequency of monitoring is about 2 things. One is your customer life cycle in terms of how long it is generally between orders, but also it's about the short, medium and long-term objectives of that piece of kit, whether it's increase AOV, increase customer lifetime value, increase the frequency that somebody buys, decreasing the amount of time between orders. So it's about understanding for your business, not just based on the case studies of the software company, what you're trying to aim for and what good looks like in terms of once you've implemented the product.
That's a really, really useful answer, Emily, and the fact that you break it down with specific examples makes it so much more relatable. So I think AI could sit in people's heads as this concept, but actually when you start thinking about the problem, then where you're going to apply it, then what you need to measure it, it then kind of breaks it all down far more, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's such an amazing opportunity, and also it's a bit of a minefield in terms of it's possible to end up throwing money to the wind if you don't think through the process of investment before you go ahead. And also once you've got the tool in place, making sure you're monitoring it appropriately and changing, if you're finding that the results are not coming out as you had hoped for, deciding what action to take rather than letting it slide for too long.
Yep, let's talk about an AI cracker, isn't there? There's human one side, then AI happens in the middle, then the human happens at the other side, check it before they even allow it to do what it wants to do. All these kind of checks and processes that you need to have behind it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, predictions, let's go on to what we expect for the next 12 months, because obviously there's been lots of talk about AI. Then we have the AI hype, then we have people being disillusioned with AI not working very well with the earlier versions of AI coming out, say for Meta ads, which weren't really performing. Then suddenly they started, suddenly improving, people are starting to get results. So where do you kind of see AI going in e-commerce over the next year? What kind of things do you think it's really going to, which areas is it really going to be saving the manual tasks for?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think, interestingly, a lot of the way that AI is going to become even bigger is actually in the automation side of things. I think we're just going to see more and more repetitive tasks. So, sorry, that's only partly answering the question. I guess the first part of the answer is I think there's going to be more automation as well as more AI. I don't think it's just going to be AI that's going to rise. I think automation will continue to rise. I think there is going to be a lot more predictive modelling that businesses are going to use. So currently you're generally a relatively decent sized business by the time you start doing propensity modelling in terms of what your customers are going to buy and when they're going to buy and the parameters and factors that make somebody more likely to buy again. And I think AI is going to really help smaller businesses, because you don't actually need massive data sets to be able to make some really good predictive models. But I think there's going to be a lot of scope for businesses who are in that midpoint. So they're past that point of gut feel, but they're not big enough to have their own data team. And I think that middle size of businesses are really going to benefit from the propensity modelling side of things and the forecasting side of things. I think in terms of the creative image generation, we are going to be seeing huge stride. I mean, already the difference between, let's say, this July and last July for products like Midjourney, the rapidity of the improvement of those products is wild. I mean, it's absolutely mind-blowingly speedy. The exponential curve is amazing. And I think we will just see that continue to improve. I think the bit that is going to be really interesting to see is people's reactions to it. So, for example, we had the case this week of the influencer at Wimbledon with the 50,000 likes, and actually she is an AI created person, but the image looked really real unless you look too closely into the background when some of the people looked a bit wonky, and I think she had a problem going on with her knee. But things like that very quickly aren't going to be, there won't be a problem with her knee, and the people in the background will be fine. And then I think it will be interesting to see whether human interaction with AI continues at the pace that it is, or whether we get a bigger proportion of society deciding to step back a little. I think we might see more in-person events coming to the fore again. But in terms of e-com businesses, I think there's scope for just these tools becoming part of the everyday, and the makeup of marketing teams and e-com teams changing. So because we're going to have more automation and we're going to have more AI, perhaps some more of those junior roles will become fewer in number, perhaps. But I think there absolutely will always be the need for the strategic side and for the human eye, that human emotion. But I do think that the tools are going to continue to improve at a hugely speedy rate. It's just difficult to predict exactly what the human interaction with that will look like. And also in terms of from the paid advertising side of things and the way that websites are run, and the way that, actually one thing we haven't touched on at all, which is obviously huge, is how the whole area of search is going to change. And so all of that is going to shift. The whole search model is going to shift. SEO absolutely is still going to be hugely relevant, but it's going to be driving to LLMs as much as to Google, etc. So the way that will all shift, we are going to be just using search and AI in a completely different way. So I think that in terms of, your question was about e-com businesses. So I think it will change hugely for e-com, but also I think how we as consumers find e-com businesses, that is going to be the biggest significant shift. Is going to be the way that we as consumers search for things and find things. And that is going to be a really key focus for businesses going forward, not just the tools they use within their business, but the way that they make their visibility happen out in the world to their consumers.
Yep, and I think that e-com, we haven't had a choice about it either. The marketing models have changed, AI's come in, and we can't ignore it now. It's been very, very quick to adopt all this technology, and there's no consent involved. So, you're happy to move over to this model. You might have put all your time and resources into running it the old way, and
Absolutely.
suddenly the whole landscape's massively shifted. And you've got to take these models, which might be inferior, might be superior. We don't know which, but we've just got to adapt with the day to day, try and work out what's in the algorithm, attend all the talks, and find out what it is, and then suddenly we're all going for product images now. It's all talking about product images, aren't we, and videos, so everyone's moving that way towards this more visual side, whereas a few months ago it wasn't on the visual side. So we're really kind of at the mercy of all these changes that are happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's interesting about it, slash challenging, is that just the rapidity with which it's all happening. So we've had seismic shifts like this in the past. When desktop publishing came in, for example, moving away from hand-drawn design. But it's the speed with which this is happening is something that we as as a society haven't experienced before. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
I think we could talk for hours on this topic, couldn't we? It's been really amazing talk, Emily. Is there anything else you want to add, or is this a good point to finish on?
This seems a great point to finish. Thank you so much for having me. It is really fascinating. I think the one thing I would finish on is to say, to founders, it's nothing to be, we don't need to be afraid of it, but it's about really just the way that we've done up to the point of having AI. Just like any other business decision, it's making sure you really think through what you're trying to achieve before jumping in with both feet for any tool or investment you make in your business, not just from the AI side. And if you keep that in mind, you won't go far wrong, because you'll be doing what you've always done, which is doing the best for your business and for your team, for your growth.
Absolutely, and it's that control, isn't it? It's not just relying on AI to solve your problem. It's actually having that knowledge around what you've got, where you want to get to, how you can use the tool, is it going to work or not? And that blend of expertise and experience, and your knowledge around your customers, what they buy from, what they like, it's never going to go away, is it? So,
Yeah, absolutely.
right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right,